Is a serial entrepreneur, has a postgraduate degree in commerce, and he's an alum of the Kellogg's University in USA. He began his career in 1985 as a merchant banker and gained his expertise in advising and structuring financial closures. He very soon realized that infrastructure development would drive the second generation reforms and envisioned space creation that would generate and play a critical role in driving the Indian economy. He therefore promoted the Marg Group, which began in 1994, and since then he is a protagonist in the rapid growth of the company and the project base of more than 8,000 crores and is becoming a lead innovator in this vertical space. He is driven Marg to diverse projects such as ports, SEZs, roads, IT parks, malls, and commercial and residential real estate. He's been an active member of the CII and a charter member of TIE. I think the one that he is going to present today is a very unique, interesting project. I mean, there are a lot of private townships, so many of us are seeing these townships. Lavasa has come under a lot of criticism. Swarnabhumi, which is the township that GRK has promoted and which is in Tamil Nadu on the outskirts of Chennai, is what his experience and what he is going to present and talk about in detail, the challenges and some of the normative guidelines and the way he actually land utilization and prevention of ecological disaster of any kind and protecting the environment, as well as integrating with the rural. And I think that's very interesting. Some of us talked about this in the earlier session. So without any further ado, let me invite Bimal, who will make the first presentation. In terms of timing, we are going to be very quick on the clock so that we can actually close this out fast. I know GRK has to go back and he has a flight at 1 o'clock, so just I will let you know 5 minutes before you have to close.
Okay. Yes, your phone. Sorry. Okay, I have not much time, so let me, without further ado, let's get ahead. I need to look at this. Turn this around a little bit. Can you hear me? No. Can you? Is that better? Okay, here we go. Okay, next please. What I want to propose is the following. All of us know that making city planning work is imperative to making our cities work, and most of us are lamenting the fact that city planning does not work in India. I'd like to propose that it has not worked in India because city planners have used the wrong approach and the wrong tools. Unless we modify that, it's not going to work. What we have used is essentially a central planning license Raj approach. We have attempted to replace markets by planning. We have used a technocratic and an apolitical approach, by which I mean planners are always constantly complaining about politicians. And we have used unfair, non-participatory statutory frameworks like the Land Acquisition Act. And somebody said earlier that we have used an aspatial approach and a non-comprehensive approach. I'd like to propose that if the right tools and approach are used, city planning can be made to work in India. I intend to show this to you by showing you an example of where I think this has worked. You've seen this, Swati, so please bear with me. Next, please. When we are in cities, if you were in charge of a city, the problems will present themselves to you in a very simple fashion. To make our cities livable, comfortable, equitable, etc., we need to do the following sort of tasks. And this is not a complete list. You need to widen streets, you need to provide roads, parks, public amenities as we grow. You need to provide infrastructure, redevelop older areas of cities, manage peripheral urban growth, provide housing for the poor. We need to find money or land to do all of the above. We need to regularize illegal construction. We need to curb nuisances, regulate private development, and there's a long list. This is how the problems will present themselves to you if you are in charge of city planning. Let's just look at one of these problems, managing peripheral urban growth, and how this has been managed, is managed in Gujarat, but I'm using the example of Ahmedabad. Next, please. Well, all of our cities are growing. They're going to continue growing for the next 2 or 3 decades. So managing peripheral urban growth is a standard problem that all cities are going to face. European cities faced them in the 19th century, we're facing them now. Next please. When you go to the urban periphery, you have agricultural fields like this. For a city, you need a layout which is regular, has roads, has infrastructure. Here's a contrast between the two landscapes. You have to convert the landscape on the left to land that is suitable for building. Next please. If you want to do that, you have to reshape plots, you have to provide access, you have to provide infrastructure, provide amenities, pay for all of the above, get all the owners to agree, and you have to regulate private development after that. Next please. So it's imperative that to manage peripheral urban growth, you need a sound system for planning, financing, and implementing transformation of agricultural land into urban land. Next please. So how does the country do it? There are 4 or 5 different ways in which we are presently doing this conversion of agricultural land into urban land. The first method is called laissez-faire. Let the city grow into the countryside. We don't do anything. So here, owners and developers build out into the countryside. Maybe authorities approve some layouts. Developers are required to provide some basic services. After all the development happens, maybe later on, the authority goes in, whichever municipality, etc., goes in and cleans up as best as they can. Next, please. In this case, what we are doing is planning. We are saying no planning, everything is to be done by markets. Okay, the markets will solve the problem. Next, please. The second way of doing this, I think many cities use this, is to make a general development plan for the city where the basic trunk infrastructure is laid out. For example, the main roads going out of the city are laid out, water supply, main supply is provided. In such cases, the authority just does a macro city plan and provides this infrastructure by using the Acquisition Act. It gets the land, it provides infrastructure, and then the infill is done by laissez-faire method. So it's, in this case, next please, what you have, some features are planned, the rest of them, you leave it to the market. Next please. Yet, a third method that has been used in our country for managing peripheral growth is to go out and do wholesale acquisition of land. Gandhinagar was built like that, a lot of TDA operated like this. You go out, you go into the countryside, use the Acquisition Act, buy the land, compensate the farmers, throw them out, build the infrastructure, make plot layouts, sell the plots for urban growth. So this is also a method that has been used. Next please. Here what we are saying is no markets, everything is to be planned. There's no role for markets and developers here, everything is to be done by public authorities. Next please. We are trying out yet another method today called townships. Here instead of the public authority going out and assembling land, you let developers go out and assemble land. Government just provides some regulatory support. Next please. What it does is planners become regulators and markets are restricted. Planning function is internalized by developers, okay? And you get estates such as the one we are in. Next, please. Now, I want to propose to you that there is a fourth method, which is much better, the fourth or fifth method, whatever, fifth method, which is much better. And I want to show you what this method is. I call it the DPTP method or mechanism. DP is development plan followed by town planning scheme. And it's an interesting and a relatively well-functioning method. And it has a completely different approach to doing planning and implementation. Next, please. It's based on a state act. It's used extensively in Gujarat. And it's possible to do this in Gujarat because the planning legislation of the state allows you to do this. Many other planning legislations have these provisions, but they are not used. Next, please. This is not a method I invented. It's a very old method. It's been functioning since 1915. Maharashtra used to use it also. It has been continuously improved. Maharashtra abandoned it. Gujarat improved it. It has been tested in court. It's a really good method and it functions. Next, please. Keep in mind that this is not the Acquisition Act, and Gujarat does not use the Acquisition Act to do its peripheral growth. Next, please. What is done is, it's a two-stage planning process and a two-stage planning, and it's not just planning, it's planning and implementation all rolled together in one. First, a city-wide development plan is prepared where areas for new urban growth are identified and city-level infrastructure is identified. Second, Then you go into details and smaller areas are picked up and the development plan that has been prepared is implemented. So the two together are planning and implementation, macro, micro. Next please. So here for example is the development plan of Ahmedabad that was made in 1999, and all of these areas were new growth areas. Actually they were agricultural fields at the time. And all of this infrastructure was planned, which is basically a big road, 3 kilometers apart. Next, please. All of this colored land here is the new land, agricultural land that was opened up for development. The city was going to expand into these areas. Next, please. I'm going to talk about this one small area and explain how it was done. But before that, next, please. I need to show you a simple example, because if I don't show you a simple example, it's difficult for me to explain what it means. Imagine, for example, that there are 7 friends who buy 7 agricultural plots on a road that is already existing. They are all Gujaratis, so they are called Ajay Bhai, Harish Bhai, something, etc. And they all buy them right next to each other and decide to develop their plots and say, we're going to develop this and build our houses here and build infrastructure here. So what they then do is get a planner, not an architect, they get a planner, and in the sense I'm talking about. Next please. He comes in and says, okay, first thing you need is you need a road through the middle. You need let's put a garden here, because it would be nice to have a garden just as you enter this colony. And let's put the sewage treatment plant here, infrastructure here, and let's put aside some land to sell to somebody commercially so that we can get money to build all these infrastructure. He finds afterwards that all of this land needed for all of this happens to be 25% of the total land area that all the people, 7 people, own together. And so, next, he decides to deduct 25% from everybody's plot and reduce their holding by that much amount. And so he writes down 25% deduction, next please, and then calculates what the final plot people are going to get, next please. And then he draws up in red color here all the final plots. These are obviously 25% smaller than what the people held before. Okay. Next please. After this is done, he wipes out the old lines and says the layout is ready. This is how we have been doing planning up to now. This would be perfectly fine if everything would work as simply as this. Problem is that this fellow starts complaining. He says, how come this guy's garden is next to this guy's plot, you know? His value increases. And this guy says, no, I don't want the sewage treatment plant next to me. And this guy says, you took 25% of my land, but my land was costlier because it was near the road. And this guy says, no, my land was cheaper, not. This is politics, in the starting of politics. If we do not address this problem, this plan can never go through, and that, I would suggest, is the problem of most of Indian development plans. How does the planner then go ahead and address this problem? He says, yeah. I need to address the problem of unequal distribution of costs and benefits. Unless I address this problem, my plan cannot be implemented. Okay? So he then goes ahead next and says, first, let me take the original value of everybody's plot of land and write it down here. You can see that the plots near the road are costlier and the plots further away are cheaper. So he writes down the per square meter rate of all of these guys next, and then he multiplies it by the land area that has been deducted from everybody's plot. And on paper, remember, on this table, he compensates everybody for their lost land holding. The guys who have lost valuable land actually get compensated more. Guys who have lost less valuable land get compensated less. Next, please. After that, he then goes ahead and tries to imagine that after this development is done, what will be the value of all of these plots? What will be the future value? So what is the benefit that is accruing to everybody from the development? Next, please. Once that is done, he's able to understand what is the increment in land value that people are enjoying because of this development, and then he takes away a little bit of the increment, next please, from everybody. He, of course, the people who have got more near the garden, his value is going to go up, so more gets taken away from him, and this guy, less gets taken away from him. Now, you might ask me, how is it possible to do this technically accurately? It's not possible to do this technically accurately. Nobody can know the future. The planner is only finding some notional way in which to compensate people. He's imagining the future and he has something to tell other people that, see, this guy lost more, so I'm giving him more. This guy lost less, I'm giving him. He is basically addressing the political problems through this procedure that arise from unequal costs and benefit allocation. Next, please. Once that is done, all these tables are added up and whatever is the final net demand is told to everybody. And now, in a sense, everybody is happy that, you know, my grievances have been addressed and politics has been laid to rest. So the planner actually becomes the person who uses his tool and his planning to address a political problem. Next, please. And finally, the scheme gets done because everybody is happy because by coming together, they've actually increased their land value a lot more than they paid for the infrastructure. Next, please. Now, you might say this is easy when there are 7 guys. Next, please. You take this plot here. This is how it's done when you have a lot of landowners. Here, for example, is an area which was agricultural. This is the river here. And development had already started in some parts. About 100 or 150 hectares are taken at a time. There are 250 landowners here. Next, please. Once that is done, first of all, planner selects the area based on the development plan, which area to go and do this planning in. Then the area is surveyed in detail. Every tree, every borewell, everybody's house, everything is surveyed. Next, please. Once that is done, a Lakshman Rekha is drawn around this plan. It's a statutory Lakshman Rekha. That statutory Lakshman Rekha now freezes development inside. Nobody can do any new development here until the process is complete. Next, please. Once that is done, everybody's ownership records are found. Now, please remember, this is just so that the planner can tabulate who the owner is on paper. It does not matter if your records are in poor state. Next, please. You will understand that later. Then this whole exercise is done. You can see here, this is the Act prescribes a form like this. This is the original plot value. Everybody's names are written here. The area is written here. Value is written. I don't go into details. Next, please. Once that is done, the land holdings, that agricultural land holdings are clarified. Next, please. Once that is done, the roads are laid out like that. You can see all the roads have been laid out. Next, please. Once that is done, plots are carved out, like I said, for infrastructure, for gardens, for anything you like. This is for EWS housing in the area. So you're going to make EWS housing in this area. If this is going to develop, it will have bungalows, you will need servants. This is where you could build EWS housing, etc. Next, please. Once that is done, the final plots are delineated. You can see, you find out how much area got used up in the roads and all of these plots. And then you deduct that much from everybody's plot and draw up in red. Next, please. Once that is done, you wipe out the green lines, which is the original plots. Next, please. Then you complete your table. You do that exercise of compensation. You do that exercise of next, please. You do the compensation of valuing future valuation of the plots. Once that is done, next, please. You call all the owners together. I'm going to just finish this and then we'll be done. Once all the owners are called together and the plan is presented to them, they get a chance at this point to object. Next, please. And they send in objection suggestions in this format. Next, please. Once the town planner looks at the objection suggestions that have been sent and alters the plan as required. Next, please. Once that is done, the law allows him to take possession of the streets and build the infrastructure. He starts this work. Next, please. And then the state government at that point appoints a quasi-judicial officer to listen to any grievances that have been left out by the planner. Next, please. This is a sort of quasi-judicial process. Finally, the judicial officer alters the plan once again, small things that he needs to change, compensation that he needs to increase or benefits that he needs to take away. Next, please. Once that is done, the final plots are handed over, betterment levies are collected and private plots are developed according to permission. Next, please. You might say this is an awfully complicated thing to do. How do you manage 250 people? But for your information, all of Ahmedabad is developed in this manner, which is why you have presently at least, before development happens on the periphery, infrastructure is already in place in a lot of places. All of this area you will see on Google Map that the infrastructure is ready. And next please. This is not a new method, it is coming from the Scottish town planning tradition. Next please. The Act is from 1915. Next please. This is one of the early schemes of Ahmedabad in 1946. This is center of town right now. Next please. This system works because it's specified in robust enabling legislation. Now, what I want you to understand is this works. For what reasons does this planning system work? Because it is specified in good legislation. Most importantly, it's simultaneously a techno-legal mechanism for city planning, plan financing, plan implementation. Understand, this is not planning done first and somebody else implementing, it's all together. The mechanism incorporates both city-wide macro level planning, the first stage, and the second one, which is micro level planning. So you look not at just in big picture, you also look at the sort of tiny details. There is considerable flexibility it gives the planner. Costs and benefits can be valued and allocated in the form of land, location, money. Most of you will understand this location issue. Or even development rights. All interlocking plan implementation tasks like land appropriation, betterment levies, redrawing the plan, everything works to one clock using a single legislation. Actually, you can do this entire complex task using different legislations, but here you have all these tasks folded up into one legislation. Next, please. It promotes a comprehensive approach. You don't do one thing at a time. You know, this is what Mr. Ribeiro was talking about earlier. You don't take a sectoral approach, you take a comprehensive approach. It is inexpensive. You don't have to pay for the land, you don't have to pay for the infrastructure. Actually, all the landowners are paying for it through the increase in land value. The mechanism is backed by professional city planners who are very proud of what they do. If you go to Gujarat, you won't find them lamenting that their plans are not implemented. Next, please. But most importantly, it's based on a profoundly pragmatic approach. Property rights are respected. Our earlier planning was not respecting property rights. You wanted to do good at the expense of a few. Costs are distributed across larger number of people and all owners lose the same amount of land or money. So you are distributing costs. Benefits are shared. Okay? You cannot have costs on one set of people and benefits on another set of people. That means planning will not work. So it does this. And this is a problem only in a democracy, by the way. This won't be a problem in dictatorships. And so owners keep substantial portion of the improved value of the land. Planning seeks to use the land market, not to thwart it. It's working with the market rather than against it. Public inputs are sought and grievances are redressed. On account of this, it is perceived to be fair and equitable planning, and that is why it works. Next, please. Note that this mechanism that I've described is a versatile city planning and plan implementation tool that can be used to address many other challenges. I've only talked of peripheral growth. I don't have time. I could show you, if you allow me for 3 minutes, I'll show you one quick example. Next, please. Also note that it's in these days when we are questioning the Acquisition Act, this is a brilliant, structured framework for the state to negotiate with private landowners. It's perhaps the only framework that will work. The Acquisition Act, we should limit its use. Next, please. The principles and approach to city planning underpinning this mechanism and this system are key to making city planning work in India. Next, please. Just one quick example. Next, please. Next. In that plan, it was decided to make a big ring road around the city. It would have required 4.5 square kilometers of land because it was 76 kilometers long and 60 meters wide. Normally, all cities have some ring road and they use the Acquisition Act. Next, please. What we do when we do a ring road is, next please, we put 2 lines like that and we tell all these farmers, you please take some compensation, get out. They lose out. The neighbors get a lot of benefit because the land value increases tremendously. Obviously, this guy tries to use all political pressure to push this road on this side, and this guy pushes it this side. Then the planner complains about political pressures and politics not letting your plan do that. But don't have to do that. Next, please. Basically, you don't have to use this mechanism too often. The less you use it, the better it is. Next, please. So, next, please. What you have to do, next, please. Think of this, previous, please. Previous. Think of this as a room, okay, where all these farms and all these farmers, next please, are actually all these farmers inside this one big room. There is no space at all left in the room. Next please. What you want to do is you want to make a road through the middle, and so you want to throw these farmers out of the room, and you want to benefit all these guys here. That's how planners have approached planning up to now. Now that's a very poor way of doing it. Instead, what we say, and think of that mechanism I showed you. Next, please. What we say is, why doesn't everybody move to the side? Everybody loses equal amount and you get some space in the middle. Next, please. This is precisely how it was done. Each one of this was a town planning scheme where all the farmland was reorganized so that you could move out. Next, please. So a plan that was drawn up sanctioned in 2002, you could appropriate 4.5 square kilometers and build the road within 4 years. I don't think anywhere planning has worked like this. Next, please. Here, if you go to Google, you will see it. Next, please. But you please come to Ahmedabad. You can drive on it, 76 kilometers around. I won't go through the other examples, but I think you got my point. Thank you very much.
Because long-term plans don't really effectively do that. And how that happened this is the pre-master plan area, 1915 Town Planning Act, and the same Albert Mayak who then did the Chandigarh plan. So Modak was the chief engineer of municipal corporation, and they for the first time said that Mumbai is an island city and it can't expand unless you think of a regional scale in terms of planning across the harbour. Next. In 1955, till 1955, there was no concept of master plan or development plan in Maharashtra and Mumbai. So for the first time in 1955, it was introduced. The first plan was done during a period of 64 to 67. The approval process, the process of making preceded that. And it had standard things, land use zoning, road network, FSI, reservations for school, hospitals, playground, etc., which were supposed to be acquired. Interestingly, however, the last sentence in the plan report says that we hope enough funds will be made available by the state and the central government. So that showed the disconnect between the planning process and how the finances will be raised in order to implement that. Next one. While this process of plan approval was going on, it was realized that the growth impulses of Mumbai were going far beyond the municipal jurisdiction. Though in case of Mumbai, the municipal jurisdiction was fairly extended twice, once in 1950, once in 1957. And in a way, kind of problems that Calcutta faced, of 40 municipalities within close vicinity, was avoided in case of Mumbai. I think Mumbai Municipal Corporation is one of the largest jurisdiction in terms of keeping pace with the growth. But beyond 57, that wasn't possible because many new municipalities were coming up and they were very careful and proud of retaining their identities and wouldn't have allowed themselves to be incorporated in Mumbai. Government therefore appointed a committee, as usual, to look at how regional planning could be introduced, particularly in case of Mumbai and Pune. And Dr. D.R. Gadge, who later became the deputy chairman of the planning commission, he was the chairman at that time. Now, what happened around the same time is that in 1965, Charles Correa, Praveena Mehta and Shirish Patel wrote an article about the idea of New Bombay. And they went and presented it before this committee also. So committee in its report says that some young architects came before us and gave this brilliant idea of New Bombay. So they noted that. Now, and a legislation was created to facilitate statutory regional plans. So in Maharashtra now you have regional plans, development plans and town planning schemes which are dormant. But there is a sort of 3-tier planning system which is there in the Act. And what the Act said that you create a regional planning board which will do the regional plan for the city region as a whole. And one for Mumbai was appointed in 67 next. And they did a plan for 70, it was approved, it was prepared during 67 to 70 and approved during 70 to 73.